Hey guys, Bicebump here, bringing you another War Within alpha video about the Frost and Unholy Death Knight. We've gotten a couple of changes over the last 2 weeks, so I thought as always we're going to take a look at what exactly they are, how they impact our rotation, and what we feel about them. Just jump straight in, we have a couple of changes for Unholy and specifically the Sunline tree. So, Infliction of Sorrow has been redesigned. This is the spell that interacts with our diseases. So previously, when you press Dark Transformation, you would get a 3-second duration increase on your dots whenever you press Scud Strike or Vampiric Strike as it turns into, and then also you get 20% damage increase. And then once it finished, you would get a Vampiric Strike proc, and then that would consume your diseases and deal 200% of the remaining damage. Essentially, what this meant was that during Dark Transformation, you didn't want to press anything other than Skirt Strike, because essentially you get extra Brittle Plague duration that was like 3 seconds minus the GCD, so it would stack up your duration over your Dark Transformation, and once you exit that window, you would then get 200% value on that kind of extension, which meant that pressing Skirt Strike was just incredibly high value. Now, this has all changed, so there are no more randomly consuming diseases outside Dark Transformation like previously. Instead, you always have the effect that Vampiric Strike gives you 3 seconds extra duration on your diseases and deals 20% of the remaining damage whenever you press it. And furthermore, once you exit your Gifted Sunline window, which is when your Dark Transformation finishes, the next Skirt Strike will simply consume all diseases and deal 100% of the remaining damage. The actual patch note says 200%, but they did change that in the later one, so it's 100%. The impact here is that you get a much more balanced and intuitive window. So you still want to not press Fetching Strike during your Dark Transformation window with Sunline. However, it's now a good idea to kind of mix in Death Course and hitting the Skirt Strike. You get Dark Transformation extension with Eternal Agony, which means that overall, it's not mandatory to always press the Skirt Strike, because sure, you get that 20% extra damage of your diseases, you get the disease extension, which then feeds into when you burst your diseases afterwards, but the feedback loop is not strong enough to just always spam Skirt Strike, which is a good idea. So the new Sunline is, your Poppy DT, and then you're going to press Skirt Strike, but you're also going to weave in some Death Calls, essentially to extend that Dark Transformation window and get more value out of it. You can view it as a Death Call, essentially gives you another Skirt Strike to press in that window, so you get value from that. Because you get 1 second duration. If you like in Lost, that kind of gives you more than a GCD's worth. So that's the general vibe. We also have a couple of bug fixes and changes. So decomposition down here, it now functions with Gargle. It was bugged and didn't previously. Just to remind yourself, it's that duration increase. So your dots would randomly make your pets last for longer. We have that Ghoulish Frenzy, it's now a single point. It used to be 2 points, but it remains the value of that single point. So it didn't become stronger for that single point. But it's also now easier to kind of route through, so you don't have to spend 2 points there. Same thing with improved Death Call. Second point we used to do 15 to 30% additional damage, and now it just stays at 15. It kind of makes sense because a single point in this is big value because you get that additional nearby enemy instantly. So I think it makes sense to bring that one to a 1 pointer. We also have the Apocalypse now always summons 4 ghouls regardless of wounds burst. This is interesting because Apocalypse has always been based off the number of wounds you burst, gives you the number of pets you summon. But now that's completely gone. It means that we're now much more flexible about pressing Apocalypse. Obviously, it's nice to burst 4 wounds because that's more efficient. But you don't have to care about having 4 wounds because doing a 3 to your 1 isn't going to, significantly change the value. This might have been done in a response to Death Call bursting wounds when you get Sudden Doom procs. That was a recent change, which could have made it annoying that you're sitting on 4 wounds, you rage press your Apocalypse, you suddenly get a Sudden Doom proc, and that ruins your Apocalypse press. Now you're all good to go. You get 3 wounds. It's going to be fine to press Apocalypse, and you won't feel bad. So good news. Final change in this round, we had that the file damage is now increased by 200% compared to before, but it doesn't give you a mastery buff. This is quite interesting. It means that you don't have that same synergy of the file with your cooldowns. Previously, when you ran the file, you wanted to chain those mastery buffs to buffs all your pets and that kind of thing. That's all now gone, and you just a raw damage button. I quite like this. Playing with the file isn't great. It's a terrible mechanic due to the fact that it just covers up all ground mechanics. So making that less usable in like a raid environment. Good news, I don't like it. So you can just, if they're not going to change the visual, they have to do something that makes us not play this, because I do not like playing with it. All right, that was that round. Some very interesting changes. I'm very happy about the sun line. I feel like it's much more intuitive now. I feel like the general vibe here is you're going to probably stack up a couple of wounds before you press Dark Transformation, go into your window, and then you can do the Skirt Strike, Deathcore kind of weave. Furthermore, if you have stuff like, you know, your pet's going to generate some wounds with Infected Claws, if you have your Abomination, that will generate wounds that you can burst. So I feel like it's much less degenerate and it's more intuitive. Furthermore, you don't have this annoying thing happening outside your CD where you get Vampiric Strike proc and boom, your dots are gone. Or you get it and then you have to reapply dots, consume them, and then reapply them again to get the optimal play. Now you consume them after DT window. That's a huge burst of damage. Couple issues with if you have a like long DT window, that burst damage is going to come outside your trinkets and your general buffs, which is going to make it tricky in the kind of figuring out where to buff everything. But overall, happy about those changes, so good news. Now we have another round. Let's see. We have some Deathbringer changes here, which are quite marginal. We have a rename of Death's Bargain to Pact of Deathbringer, whatever. Exterminate now deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets, quite standard, that kind of reduced damage beyond 8 targets thing. Right, some more changes to Sunline. You can see here we have that Infliction of Sorrow now deals 100% of the remaining damage of the consumed diseases, was 200%. We discussed that earlier. That's a good idea. It means that you have a slightly less incentive to just spam Skirt Strike when your DT is active. That's good news. We have Visceral Regeneration, renamed and redesign. So Visceral Strength, when Crimson's Skirt Strike Sudden Doom is consumed, you gain 5% strength for 5 seconds. So I'm just going to have a look at where that one is, because I can't quite remember. Oh, there we go. I can't remember what this used to do, but this is quite nice. Attach some more value to Sudden Doom, gives you a bit of a strength buff. They're really trying to hammer down that, you know, Sudden Doom is now an exciting and really powerful proc. I quite like it. It's going to feel really nice when you get those procs, so tying more buffs into that is not too bad, you know. All right. Let's see. Finally, Infliction of Sorrow not only functions with Virulent Plague for Unholy Death Knight. So that used to kind of increase the duration of the other dots when you had Super Strain, but now it's all Virulent Plague. Also, a bit of a nerf to ability, but I think that's fine. You don't want this to be so strong that we end up in gameplay which is unfun. So this all tunes it in the right kind of way. Alright, some more Unholy Talents before we talk about the single Frost change. We have Foul Infections now correctly increases disease crit chance by 5%. So that used to be multiplicative crit chance. So if you have like, oh, you can't have that. If you have 50% crit, you would have multiplying that with 1.05, which I think would end up being more than actually a flat addition. Let's see. Am I thinking about this wrong? Oh no, yeah, it used to be bad. If it was multiplicative, it was low value, so this is now better. All right, I think that's the case. All right, so another thing, we have an Obliged Sour passive. This is no longer a button, and instead functions with Dark Transformation. So when you press Dark Transformation, Unholy Blight will now be casted around that pet and then work in the exact same way. Really nice change. It didn't really need to be its own button, because you would always just use it with Dark Transformation, you know. It will mean that when we spec it, we don't have to press Virulent Plague in opener. You know, we lose essentially 2 buttons pressing this in the opener. And we'll see that the opener is going to be much less complex due to this. I think they really nailed this, that a couple changes, also like Apocalypse. Now now bursting off, however many wounds they want. But also Upraise Abomination being really good talent. That one deals like 8% of the damage to army, but will half the cooldown. And it just goes out and starts attacking immediately. The big issue with the army is that it took like 8 seconds to like get started. And that had major implications for our buff windows and how we used all our cooldowns, that kind of thing. So that, with Race Abomination now being straightforward, we can essentially just go in and just immediately pop all our cooldowns, which is what you would intuitively do instead of all this kind of weird overlap of business going on. Alright, we had a Sudden Doom no longer causes epidemic to burst festering wounds on targets. Sad, sad, sad. It now only works off Death Call. It was probably too powerful, right? But now you kind of lose the good part of it. Still, Sudden Doom proc Epidemic is still going to do a ton of damage. Previously, it would fit in really nicely in the rotation with bursting wounds. But yeah, I understand why they did this. It was probably too powerful. So, but still, a bit sad. I really enjoyed that. Alright, furthermore, when we're talented into Harbinger of Doom, Sudden Doom now displays the activation overlay images separately left and right for each stack. This is kind of what they've been doing with Killing Machine. So if you have one proc, you have this left-handed thing showing up. And if you get a second one, you would have the right one showing up. So it intuitively gives you like a good, there we go. So now we have both. We actually need to have some reading power now. Consume that, there we go. That's how it works. Okay, so a lot of changes in there. I feel like these are all very targeted. They've been, oh, there was an issue with Sunline. It was a bit weird that we would spam so much Skirt Strike. They fixed that. Made the tree a bit more nice to path around with these 2 towns now being only costing 1 point. Fixed a couple of bugs. Generally, good stuff. I feel like I get a sense that they understand the issues with Unholy and are actively trying to sort them out. There are still issues, I think. I think there's still a problem with like big AoE builds being heavily into AoE and not so much single target. But, this right here could be our main single target build. And it kind of feels okay. We don't have to pick up Gargle. We have our Doom bidding. We're going to have so many pets out, but also not that many pets because that's race combination. We're going to have our DT windows being lots of Skirt Strike and Death Call spam. But, I don't mind. I feel like we're in a good space. I feel like this could be a fun Unholy to play. It wouldn't be as bursty as before. But it's also quite, I love Doom bidding. It's such a fun spell. And to get this feeling that, you're summoning Magi to attack enemies. It's just great. I really like it. Alright. Our one frost change before we finish the video. Obliteration now has an additional effect. When Pillar of Frost is active, it will now also increase the cost of your Frost Strike by up to 15 runing power to deal up to 52.5% additional damage. This is a big one, actually. So, a major issue with Obliteration is that it's not very resource efficient. In your Obliteration window, you very often end up overcapping a ruling power and essentially just wasting it. This right here means that your Frost Strike is now going to be a real big hitter during your Obliteration window, and you're going to be able to spend your runic power much more efficiently. So how it works is that, runic power usually costs 30 runic power. If you have 30 runic power, you can use Frost Strike and just spend that. But you can go all the way up to 45 runic power. You hit that, it will spend all of it, and then, proportionally deal that extra damage into your Frost Strike. It just means that your resources are going to be more balanced during your Obliteration window, and Frost Strike is now going to be a much, much more hard-hitting spell there. And that means that things like, Shattering Blade ends up being really interesting. Shattering Blade with Obliteration, your Frost Strikes are going to hit so damn hard. This kind of feels like, well, could this be the dual wield Obliteration comeback? Just, both hammering out big Obliteration, but just doing a really, really big Frost Strikes. I get this feeling, back in the day, two-hander versus dual wield used to be, two-hander was a bigger blitz and, funneling into that, whereas dual wield was about big Frost Strikes. That's back in the day when Killing Machine could be used on Frost Strike as well. And with this change, I feel like we're kind of entering the same paradigm, and I like it. So you could do, okay, I want to be a big obliterate hitting two-hander Death Knight, or I could be a big Frost Strike hitting dual will Death Knight. Really fun. I like it. I like it. All right. So as usual, I'm quite a positive guy, and these are positive changes. I'm quite excited about all of them. I feel like they address some of the issues we've seen in the trees, created some new interesting gameplay, some new interesting builds, that kind of thing. So thumbs up from me. Leave a comment down below. Let me know, what do you guys think about these changes? You happy? Unhappy? What do you guys want to see more? Is there anything else that's bugging you where you're like, you know, this doesn't belong for the Death Knight, let's change that. Leave a comment down below, let me know. I'll vote downvote, consider subscribing, and see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.